the most wonderful time of the year if you're a football fan, because the brand new season is less than 2 weeks away and it all starts again. The crazy championship that we all know and love, and it's arguably one of the most competitive we've had in a long time. So today I want to start bringing you guys a lot more football and sports related content to the channel, which I'm going to start doing from today onwards. And I'm going to start with a big one. I'm going to put my neck on the line and give you guys my predictions for the Championship League table from top to bottom. Who's getting promoted, who's getting relegated, and where do I think my beloved Borough will finish this season. Now, of course, it is worth mentioning I'm recording this on the 24th of July, so there is still over a month of the transfer window left. So a lot of what I'm basing my opinions on is due to the team's recruitment, the lack of signings for some, the great recruitment for others, and of course a lot can change in the next 5 or 6 weeks. Quick edit before I get started as well. After I've recorded and realised the sheer length of this video, I am actually going to split it into 2 parts. So this will be part 1, where I go from 24th up to 13th, and the next episode will be the top 12, from of course 12th up to 1st.
As the Uruguayan curls one in. Oh, Middlesbrough take the lead!
So, propping up the table at the very bottom in 24th, I've got Rotherham United. Now, I think Rotherham are going to be a common pick for a lot of people to be in a relegation fight this season and probably get themselves relegated. I've got them bottom of the league, and I feel a bit bad because I like Rotherham as a club. They've yo-yoed for a huge number of consecutive years and finally retained championship status last season against Borough, ironically enough. But I feel like they've got to kick on from that. They've got to try and make the most of the fact they've retained their championship status, and they need to try and ensure they can make themselves a championship mainstay and they're not going to be continuously fighting relegation season in, season out, because I think it's inevitable with the quality of the teams around them and the quality of teams that have come up. That trapdoor will open and they'll fall through it at some point, and I sadly think that will be this season. Now, I think Matt Taylor's done a fantastic job at Rotherham, but their recruitment this summer so far has been a little bit concerning. They've lost 2 of their better players, in my opinion. Benny's, of course, gone to Luton. Wes Harding has gone to Millwall, and I wouldn't say the players they've brought in have been anything too special. They've certainly not replaced the players who've left, and I think as well as that, they've not really taken advantage of them still being in the Championship and the teams who have come up, who of course 3 of the best League One sides we've ever seen, on top of the improvements that other teams have made in and around them. I think it's going to be very hard for Rotherham to stay up this season, and I have got them to get relegated, and I have got them at the very bottom of the table. In 23rd, I've got Sheffield Wednesday. Now, this is a little bit similar to my thoughts on Rotherham. I think Sheffield Wednesday, like I said, part of 3 of the best teams who got promoted out of League One last season, and it would have been a travesty if they'd not gone up through the playoffs. And I'm delighted that they're back in the Championship. I think they're a big club, they're a great club, and one you want to see fighting at this level. But I just, again, worry by their lack of transfer activity this summer. They've let a couple of players go. They've not really brought many in. I think they've only made 1 signing so far, and they have to strengthen when they're taking the step up to the Championship. And of course, they've lost their manager, Darren Moore, which is still a very bizarre turn of events following the U-turn that he seemed to have at the end of last season with the playoffs and the up and down roller coaster that he went through with the fans and everything last season. To finally end on a high and then him to leave, I think just leaves the club in a little bit of instability. So I'm not sold on the change of manager, the lack of recruitment. I feel like it will be a struggle for Sheffield Wednesday this season, and unfortunately I think they're going to completely miss their opportunity of being back in the Championship and will fall straight back down into League One. In the final relegation place in 22nd, I had the 2 teams that are 21st and 22nd, and I keep flipping them round, and there's a reason why I've changed my mind once again, and you'll find out who I did have when I get to 21. But in 22nd, getting relegated this season, I've gone with QPR. Now, don't get me wrong, QPR have made some okay signings, so I think will probably fit the Gareth Ainsworth system maybe a little bit more. But for me, looking at some of the football they played at the back end of last season, it was an absolute disaster. And for me, I just felt like if the season was another 5 or 10 games, no matter how many rabbits he pulled out the hat with, shock result here against Burnley, another shock result there, QPR were only going one way, and I think they were saved by the fact the season finished when it did. I don't think changes the fact that it is a dreadful style of play that I think will, more often than not, they'll struggle to create chances, they'll struggle to get possession, and I just don't think it will work with QPR's side. I still do not have faith with this Gareth Ainsworth and QPR combination, and I think once again it'll be a struggle this season, and they won't get so lucky to staying up. I think they will slip into the relegation zone, but I think that final relegation place will be very, very tight. The other two, I think, might be a little bit more cut and dry, and they'll be gone maybe with a few games to go, but this third one could be tight. But I feel like this season QPR will bide their time, but they'll slip in to the relegation zone and drop in to League One. In 21st, just surviving, and the team I did have before getting relegated was Cardiff City in 21st. But I've got them surviving just. Now, of course, last season, if it wasn't for Reading's points deduction, Cardiff would have gotten relegated. They had a disastrous season. They were terrible going forward. And I don't think that's going to change drastically this season. But I've seen them make, the odd couple of signings, which I think are positive ones, which could impact them positive. I think Yaku Mate is a decent signing. I think Carlin Grant's a fantastic loan signing. And his partnership with Robinson could be key to them getting goals at the top end of the pitch, which could be the difference. I'm not particularly sold on the Aaron Ramsey signing. I think that's just a bit of a nostalgia signing. I can't see him playing much of a part with his injury record and his lack of fitness, with, of course, how frenetic the Championship is. But I do think it's just going to give Cardiff enough to stay in the league. I don't think it's going to be easy. I don't think it's going to be an easy ride for them whatsoever. But I do think they will just about stay up once again this season. But it's going to be a struggle for them. In 20th, I've got Huddersfield Town. Now, there's no denying Neil Warnock performed an absolute miracle at Huddersfield last season. They looked down and out until he came in and he did the typical Neil Warnock thing. But I've seen personally, as a Borough fan, and I think we've seen it at many other clubs, he's an expert at taking a club who are in that desperate position and getting them out of the relegation zone. But that's sort of where his ceiling's at now. I don't think he can take Huddersfield into mid-table. I don't think he can get them challenging for the playoffs or anything like that in the slightest. I think there's a ceiling when it comes to Neil Warnock's sides. I think there's a ceiling with Huddersfield and their budget and the players they can bring in. So for me, I think it will probably be a similar finish for Huddersfield as to where they were last season. It will certainly be an easier ride for them. They won't be, I think, desperately at the bottom of the league, adrift by, many points at any stage. I think they'll be hovering in that bottom 8 for most of the season, and they'll finish in and around 20th, 19th, 18th, something like that. Maybe there'll be the odd scare there and then, but I'm confident with Warnock at the helm, they will stay up. I can't see him getting them relegated at all, but I wouldn't say it's going to be an impressive season or anything drastically more impressive than last season. I think he'll keep them up nice and steady. They'll finish around 20th. In 19th, I've got Plymouth Argyle. Now, I'm delighted to see Plymouth come up to the Championship. I thought they were absolutely ridiculous last season. Stephen Schumacher is an amazing coach, one for the future, who is going to do great things in the game. And I think he will do enough to get Plymouth or maintain Plymouth's Championship status. Now, of course, they've got a huge uphill struggle in terms of the budget, the teams they're competing with, the quality and the step up, but I do not think people should underestimate. I think the job that Stephen Schumacher did last season was absolutely phenomenal, and he proved that doesn't matter the budget, doesn't matter the teams they're going up against, they can defeat the odds. And I think defeating the odds this season for Plymouth would be staying in the Championship. I think, of course, they've got momentum, a lot of excitement, a lot of optimism, but I don't think it's going to get too exciting. I don't think they can get too carried away. I think they're going to do anything too special. But for me, Plymouth, unbelievable job getting up. I think for them, they've just got to focus on staying up, and I honestly believe Schumacher will do enough to get them up. They might have the odd scare at times, but I think he'll keep them up comfortably and they'll maintain their status in the Championship. In 18th, I've got Stoke City. Now, the reason I've got Stoke in 18th is pretty darn simple. You cannot predict what is going to happen at Stoke City. And undoubtedly, as there is every season, they bring in some exciting players, Daniel Johnson, Ben Pearson, some pretty decent players who they've brought in so far. But at the same time, I feel like there's a cycle at Stoke where they'll sign a number of players, might look pretty good on paper, but it always ends flat on its face, a bit of an anticlimax, and all the optimism going into the season quickly dwindles out into a mid to lower end table finish for Stoke City. And I'm only going off their recent record since coming down. I think they flatter to deceive regardless of what they do. I don't know if they're cursed or whatever it is, but for me, Stoke have just got 18th written all over them. I don't know if Alex Neil can muster the sort of form they had sort of February, March time, like when they come to Riverside, for example, and we were starting to really see the potential of the Stoke side. That might be the case, and they might end up fighting for playoffs this season, but I feel like we say this every season, and they never end up doing it. So I'm just going to stick them in the safest position possible, which I think is 18th. In 17th, I've got Blackburn Rovers. Now, this might seem like a pretty huge jump down or a fall down for Blackburn considering where they've been in recent seasons, but I honestly believe, and I think the data has proven over the last few seasons, especially last season, Blackburn were, their league position was false. They were, their league position was miles off, like sort of overperforming what their actual data was showing, and that was that they were a sort of mid-table side at best. And no matter how many times Blackburn would get themselves into the playoffs, they'd have a good run, their fans were adamant that they were going to make the playoffs, they were going to stay there, everyone would say they knew you're going to drop off, you're going to fall down the league, and they inevitably did every single time. But they always had that really good fast start that they could lean back on, that kept them sort of in and around it for the latter end of the season before it fizzled out. But I don't think they're going to be so lucky this season. Now, I know he maybe wasn't the best since January, but I think losing Brereton Diaz is a huge blow for them. And I do think with the noise around the club, how true these rumours are or not, I don't know, but apparently, young Dal Thomason has been told there might be a fire sale, there's been rumours about his future and whether he's, fully invested, knowing that he's going to have to sell most of his players. Whether it's true, whether it's false, I just feel like there's a little bit of uncertainty and instability around Blackburn, and I don't think this season they'll have the fortune of leaning on a good start. I feel like if they have even an average start, they'll just be mid-table at best, but I just have a feeling this season they might struggle, and that's why I've got them down in 17th. In 16th, we're getting through a lot of mid-table sides now where there's not really much to say, but I think what I will say for a lot of the teams coming up is they'd probably be a little bit higher, maybe 12th to 10th or something like that, but I feel like the improvement of some teams and I think just the better quality of squads both coming up from League One and coming down from the Premier League, I think make the middle of the championship a lot more competitive, and I think it will knock down a number of these clubs a couple of positions from where they normally would be, which is guaranteed mid-table. And in 16th, I've got Preston North End. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Preston had a decent season last year, flirted with the playoffs at the end, but I think unless they get Tom Cannon back, which they very well might do, I think it could be a struggle for them to compete with what I think is going to be a highly competitive race for the playoffs. And like I said, I think they'll just fizzle out, drop down, not get sucked into anything serious. They're not going to be in a relegation battle or anything, but I think they're just going to be a mid-table side, might go on a good run, get within a few points of the playoffs, but they'll dwindle out. And I think they're just a mid-table side who I wouldn't say have improved significantly on last season. And like I say, with the quality around them, I think getting better, they'll slip down a couple of positions, and that's why I've got them in 16th. Same can be said for 15th, and in 15th I've got Bristol City. Now, I just can't see Bristol City really progressing under Nigel Pearson. I think he's certainly took the team as far as he can, and I think it'll just be another steady season for Bristol City. There's no signs for me that they're going to do any worse than last season. There's no signs that they're going to do significantly better, and like I say, I think it's going to be a tougher mid-table, so for me, they'll just hovering around the same position. Not much else I can say at the moment. They've made some decent signings. I think Jason Knight's a decent signing. Rob Dickey might come in and do well there, but I think they're going to stay in and around where they are, or where they have been in recent years, and that is a safe spot in 15th. In 14th, I've got West Brom Albion. Now, West Brom are in a little bit of a pickle off the pitch. Recruitment-wise, hasn't been great for them so far this summer, and there is a lot going on off the pitch. And it doesn't matter how good of a squad you have, how good of a manager you have, off the field issues always leak onto the pitch eventually and start having an impact on results. We saw it last season and previous seasons. A lot of the teams who get relegated suffer with either points deductions because of off-field issues, or the off-field instability leaks onto the pitch and the players and the morale, and that is when they start to struggle. So for me, I don't see West Brom improving on last season. I really don't. I believe they don't have parachute payments anymore, so that's going to seriously impact them financially with the players that they can bring in and maintain. So for me, I don't see West Brom going any further forward. In fact, 14th might be generous for them. I think the reason why I've still got them sort of safely in mid-table is Carlos Corberán. I think he's a fantastic manager who is a great tactician, very flexible, and can certainly pull some incredible results out when West Brom will need them. I don't think it's going to be a disastrous season or anything to worry about too much, but it's certainly not going to be one that's going to bring much optimism from the Hawthorns. So for me, I think mid-table would be a solid finish for West Brom while they just sort of stabilise, and maybe they can gather themselves to make a push for it maybe next season when they're in a better place. In 13th, I've got Norwich City. Now, similar to West Brom, I am not sold by Norwich City, and I just can't see how they're going to make any further steps forward than last season, how they're going to make any significant improvement on last season. They've lost Teemu Pukki. I don't think they've got a goal scorer at the moment. Of course, this can absolutely change, but I think the lack of a goal scorer up top for them, as well as David Wagner, who I'm just not sold on as a Championship manager, is going to hold Norwich back from being a real force fighting for the playoffs this season. Of course, there is lots of quality still in and around that Norwich team, but again, I feel like it's going to be so much more competitive this season. Norwich will struggle and will probably drop down into a mid-table position. And like I said, I don't rate Wagner, and I don't think he's good enough to get Norwich into the playoffs. Maybe if it isn't going well, they might change manager, find a gem who propels them into the playoffs. But as it stands at this moment, I can't see them going any further forward than last season, and that's why I've got them in 13th. So guys, that is part one of my Championship predictions from 24th all the way up to 13th. Do let me know what you think your predictions are for the Championship this season, where you think your team will end up, and who you think, of course, will be relegated this season. And if you like the football-related content on this channel, please do give it a like, and if you're new, do subscribe for more, as I'm going to be bringing lots more Championship-based football content to the channel. Of course, I review every Borough game after I go to them as well. So yeah, do hit the like button, subscribe, comment below with your thoughts as always. A big thank you for watching, guys. Do take care, and I'll see you guys next time for part 2.